Hello and welcome to the Open Platform. Today my guest is a journalist, blogger and traveler, Mr. Alexander Lapshin. In December 2016, he was arrested in Minsk at the request of Azerbaijani authorities and extradited to Baku due to a tourist visit to Nagorno-Karabakh. Later, in September 2017, after an attempted murder against him, he was so-called pardoned and deported from Azerbaijan. Independent experts from Russia and the Netherlands also confirmed the assassination version, which became the basis for filing a complaint against Azerbaijan in the European Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg. Now he is in Israel and agreed to answer our questions. Mr. Lapshin, welcome and thank you for joining us. First of all, let me ask you about your case against Azerbaijan in European Court. What is the latest news?
Hello, friend. It's a great pleasure for me to take a part in this panel. As for my trial against Azerbaijan in Human Rights Court in Strasbourg, a complaint was filed by my lawyers on March 2018 on charges of illegal imprisonment and attempted murder by the Baku authorities. The complaint is primarily based on the Israeli forensic examinations, which were carried out immediately after my return from Azerbaijan. The Israeli authorities, following the usual rules, carried out all the necessary checks just to record all the injuries inflicted to me. The Israelis were shocked that their citizen was brought from a seemingly friendly country like Azerbaijan, with so many strange injuries indicating beatings, attempted murder, and, what is even more important, traces of imitation of suicide. So, as we remember, Azerbaijanis told to the media that I tried to commit suicide. This is absolutely untrue. I was attacked by 4 masked men and spent like 3 days in the emergency care unit in Baku Central Hospital. So all these facts have been documented. About a year ago, communications with Azerbaijan authorities began. We're talking about a judicial procedure when the country's authorities are obligated to write objections to a complaint. So, predictably, Azerbaijanis denied their guiltiness and accused the experts of Israel, Russia, and Netherlands of lack of professionalism, political motivations against Azerbaijan, and such a funny stuff, being paid by Armenian lobby in America. Naturally, such stupid arguments were intercepted by the court and the process had begun. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus epidemic, the European Court of Human Rights is working on limited mode now, and the process may drag on for another year or 2, hopefully. If you ask my own opinion, this situation starting from the moment of my arrest and ending with the accusation of the Baku authorities on attempted murder in Human Rights Court in Strasbourg is paradoxical. All this shows how illiterate and not pragmatic decisions are made by the Azerbaijani authorities and President Aliyev himself. It shows a serious conflict of interest between different ruling clans in Azerbaijan. I will also tell you that in March 2018, the Azerbaijani authorities opened a new criminal case against me, this time accusing me of insulting the honor and dignity of the President Aliyev. Based on this, they tried to put me on a wanted list in Interpol again, but received a predictable refusal from the Interpol. Then, probably taking it as undermining of the image and ruling dynasty, this time not by me, but by international authorities, they switched to open criminal case in December 2019 in Latvia. It was an attempt actually to kill me. It was prevented by Latvian special services and police. I was there on a tourism forum as a speaker, and by the end, the police recommended that I will cancel my participation and will leave the city under their protection. So I spent like 3 days in the small city of Sigulda by the police protection. I was told in a plain text by the Latvian authorities that the person who organized this planned crime against me is the head of the state security of Azerbaijan, General Ali Nagiyev, is the right hand of President Ilham Aliyev. So later the police took me to Vilnius airport in neighbor Lithuania and I was sent to Israel.
Now turning to the latest escalation in Armenian border. What was the reaction from the government, society and the media in Israel about it?
Strictly speaking, at present, public attention in Israel is completely diverted to internal political problems. As you know, there is a trial against Prime Minister Netanyahu on a whole list of corruption articles. And this fact is parallel to a deep economic crisis due to the coronavirus epidemic. So every day we see massive demonstration of protest against Netanyahu and his government, where tens of thousands of Israeli citizens are demanding the resignation of the Netanyahu government and himself. So those any other event in the world faded into the background, predictably. Nevertheless, the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Tavush region on the border this time was repeatedly mentioned in the Israeli news reports and in the press. The articles were written in a fairly natural style, with no obvious support for any country or another. Even the issue of 13 downed Israeli drones was mentioned, but without analysis and discussions. Why Israel openly supplies weapons to Azerbaijan and they use it against Armenia. So it wasn't interested for most of the Israeli public. In my own opinion, if it were not the serious internal political problems of Israel itself and coronavirus epidemic, the events around Armenia and Azerbaijan would be discussed much more broadly. So in this case, it was felt like the Israeli authorities did not know how to comment, how to deal with the participations of Israeli drones in the conflict with Armenia. Since the Netanyahu government, which is lobbies for cooperation and deeper cooperation with Azerbaijan in law spheres, is itself under pressure, and it's not known what will happen with Netanyahu himself, because who knows, he will go to jail next year, who knows. So several demonstrations took place in Israel, partly in support of Azerbaijan, with the participation of about 10 to 15 immigrants from Azerbaijan, which is strange given the community of Jewish immigrants from Azerbaijan counts about 100,000 people in Israel. There was a demonstration in support of Armenia, which was held by about 40-50 people in the Israeli city of Petah Tikva, close to Tel Aviv. In both cases, both with the Azerbaijan demonstration, with the Armenian authorities easily issued all the necessary documents and permits. There were several appearances on Israeli television and in the media on the part of the Azerbaijani diaspora, but this remained practically invisible in the media, because Azerbaijani diaspora mostly uses Russian-speaking channels in Israel, primary 9th channel, which covers no more than 5% of Israeli audience. So amongst the most prominent figures in support of Baku, it was a former defense minister of Israel, Avigdor Lieberman, who simply repeated point by point all the anti-Armenian propaganda declared by Baku for decades. As for the Armenian speeches and articles, I mean pro-Armenian speeches and articles in general, there were fewer of them than those in support of Baku, of course, because Armenian diaspora is not such a big and influential Israel, but still, it was organized much better, not only in Russian-speaking media and newspapers, but with the bigger Israeli media like Yediot Ahronot, like Davar Rishon and Jerusalem Post, which are read by hundreds of thousands and even millions of Israelis.
Jerusalem Post, the Jewish newspaper, posted recently an article which was recommending Israel to rethink its relationship with Azerbaijan. What is your opinion on that, and how popular is that idea in Israel?
I completely agree with what is written in the article, and add on my own that Azerbaijan is an important partner for Israel only in the medium term, while both sides have a common interest in confronting neighboring Iran. So, you know, that relations of Israel and Iran is very hostile. So the support of Israel and the Jewish lobby in US and Europe is important for the Baku authorities and Aliyev himself, while Israel needs a base against Iran and the ability to sell weapons in large quantities to support its military industry and tens of thousands of employers of this industry. So if we exclude the above factors, the two countries do not have absolutely nothing in common. After the absence of anti-Semitism and legends about the friendship of Jews and Azerbaijanis for hundreds and thousands of years, this is important to remember that independent Azerbaijan is only 30 years old. Before that, there was an Azerbaijani Soviet Socialist Republic, and before this, Russian Empire, and even early Iran. So it was, as we know, Azerbaijan is a part of Iran before 19th century. So therefore, I would definitely not associate the absence of anti-Semitism in Azerbaijan with the friendliness of Azerbaijani people and Aliyev's clan, who have been ruling in the country for the last 30 years, while for centuries the peace and silence in this region have been watched by Iran and Russia respectively. So now we're talking directly about the Jews in Azerbaijan, and we understand that this situation was different with regard to the ethnic Armenians, of course. So as soon as the situation in Iran will change, the importance of Azerbaijan for Israel will greatly decrease. But the need to ask the support of the Jewish lobby in the US and Europe from Azerbaijan will disappear as well, in a parallel, the same way. So we should not forget about the growing Islamic fundamentalism in many Muslim countries in the world, including Azerbaijan, whose leaders are very hostile to Israel.
Armenian armed forces in this latest conflict shot an Israeli-made military drone, which was considered to be the most invulnerable drone. What do you personally think on that, and what experts say?
I would divide this question into two parts. Personally, I consider this immoral to sell weapons to dictatorial regime of Azerbaijan, considering that weapons are being used against Armenia, which is quite friendly to Israel. But on the other hand, we live in a world of real politics and economics, where weapons are sold openly, especially to the countries that are not subject to international sanctions, like Azerbaijan. From a formal point of view, Israel has the right to sell weapons to Azerbaijan, even if all of us don't like it. It's also important to take into account that the main supplier of weapons to Azerbaijan is not Israel at all, but first of all Russian Federation and Turkey. In order to change the existing balance of power, it's important for Armenia to be more active in the international level and to open an embassy in Israel and to work in favor of strengthening relations with the Jewish state, both in the matter of stopping the supply of weapons to Azerbaijan and in the matter of recognizing the Armenian genocide by Israel.
You recently said that the threats from Azerbaijan, including the announcements about shooting the nuclear power plant in Metsamor, are just empty bombs and are directed mostly to the internal audience. Now we see that the leadership of this country tries to bring those threats into reality. What could you say about it now?
I think nothing has changed. Dictator Aliyev leads not a full-scale war with Armenia, but a series of border provocations just to divert the attention of rapidly impoverished Azerbaijanis from real problems within the country. So Azerbaijan, whose income built of like 18% of sale of oil, now finds itself in a huge economical troubles and the collapse. So at the same time, the appetite of the ruling dynasty did not disappear to any place, as well as the confrontation between all the ruling clans of Aliyevs, Pashayevs, Mehdiyev, and so they just fight to share the oil pie now. Add to this loss of control of the spread of the coronavirus of Azerbaijan. As for Metsamor nuclear power plant, also what we call this nuclear plant Armenia, but actually it's operated by Russian Gaian's primary company called Rosatom. This station employs a huge number of Russian engineers and technicians. So any strike against the station will lead to a death of tens of hundreds of Russian citizens who work there. So just let me remind you that the a division, I think 102 of Russian military stationed in Gyumri, which is like 100 kilometers from the station, is also responsible for ensuring the safety of the Metsamor nuclear plant. So a blow to the station means a blow to Russian citizens and Russian interests in the region. So I'm convinced that never happened. So we can sleep in peace.
Turkey expresses its complete support to Azerbaijan. Considering that now Turkey has tough relations with almost every neighbor, in Israel, what the public opinion is and what do you think personally?
In my own opinion, I live largely with Erdogan's behavior in the context of the vertical power within the country and widespread populism for the domestic audience. Neither Turkey or Azerbaijan needs a real war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which will lead to at least to the destruction of costly and very, very important transport and oil communication from both countries. I mean primarily Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline and oil terminals where the oil is pumped into the pipeline close to Baku. In addition, Turkey does not need to risk a nuclear contamination if a strike on the Metsamor station would damage the reactor and will lead to a leak of the nuclear fuel. Because it's only like 20 kilometers from the station to the densely populated areas of eastern Turkey and the large city of Igdir, which counts about 500,000 people who live there.
Well, Mr. Lapshin, thank you very much for your time and for joining us today.
Thank you very much too. I was really happy to participate in your panel. Thanks. Have a good day.
This is Open Platform of Public Television of Armenia, and today I talked to a blogger, journalist and a traveler, Alexander Lapshin, about the latest developments in Armenia-Azerbaijan border and the reactions from Israel. Thank you for watching us.